Everybody else is next vice president too. Well, I feel like this year I'm a little part of history, and I think we've witnessed at least a footnote to history here with Comptroller Jeffrey Lawrence switching his registration from R to L before our eyes. It's part of the movement this year. Brother Lawrence, if so I may address you, I thank you and salute you for that. Well, Gary Johnson and I served as governors together at the same time back in the 90s, and I was in Massachusetts, he was in New Mexico. We were both two-term governors. We both got elected by a lot more the second time than we did the first time. We both succeeded Democratic governors in blue states that were in fiscal trouble when we came in. We both turned the ship of state around, cut taxes. I cut them 21 times. Gary cut them 14 times. We cut regulations, we cut spending, we examined what bureaucracies were necessary and what regulations were and which were not. And the result was that the position of unemployment greatly improved in our states. In my first term, my first 4 years, Massachusetts went from having the highest unemployment rate in the country among the industrialized states to the lowest. And that was no accident. That was no policy. So something Gary and I can argue to the country later in the fall is that we have a proven record of being able to set the fiscal house in order, set the budgetary house in order. The fact is that every governor in the United States, except in Vermont, is required by the state constitution to file a balanced budget every single year. And you try that in Washington, D.C., the screams of outrage from Congress and the special interests would reach the sky. They say it couldn't be done. In the mid-90s, Newt Gingrich, who's a friend of mine, invited me to come down and talk to the troops, and a lot of R's had just been elected, about how you can make cuts and still get reelected. And I remember the chairman of the Senate Budget Committee said, "Do we have to balance the budget in 7 years? Couldn't we take 9? You know, it took 5 years to fight World War II, okay?" So that's sort of underlining how the folks in Washington really don't get it. You've got a two-party duopoly there, which means a two-party monopoly on political power in Washington. They seem to exist for the principal purpose of trying to kill each other every year. You know, Mitch McConnell's a good guy. He's a friend of mine, but he announced upon the election of Barack Obama that his sole goal was to make sure that President Barack Obama was a failure for the next 4 years. I'm not so sure about that, frankly. Gary and I kind of think that maybe our goal is to make sure that the people of the United States are happier and more prosperous than they were when we got into office. You never know where your next coalition is coming from, and that was taught to me by a Democrat, the late Paul Tsongas. You never know where the next good idea is coming from. So it pays to keep an open mind. And I like to think that Gary and I both have open minds, and the fact that we do have open minds was the secret to our success in putting through our policies without having them rolled back by majority Democrat legislatures. Gary cast 750 vetoes in New Mexico, mostly of wasteful spending. He was overridden like 2 or 3 times. In my case, I had to rely on coalitions with the Democrats and pick out the conservative Dems and the Dems who are in the right place on charter schools and important issues like that. And we got the job done, both of us. And the country is going to appreciate that, I think, when it comes to later in the season. Before we get to later in the season, there's one little step we have to take first. And that's a little itty-bitty step to get from Gary polling 12 and 13% in the national polls to polling 15% in the national polls. The best, the easiest, and the surest way to do that is to go viral. Gary and I cut a nice little ad. It took us about 35 minutes to do. Some of you may have seen it. It's a web ad, just the two of us at the camera, about what we want to do. It got 14 million hits in the first 2 weeks. We've since cut 2 more. We're going to Salt Lake City tomorrow to cut 3 more. So more of that is coming. And there's no question that that kind of name recognition is going to grow. Gary's now at 12 and 13%. 30-something% of the country know who Gary is, because we haven't been out there with an army at our back for the last 16 years, or 20-plus years in one case. And when the country gets to know Johnson Weld ticket better, that 12 is going to go to 24. If we get a couple of endorsements, it's going to go higher than that. But let's say it settles in at 25 in the month of September. That means we're going to be in the debates. As soon as the national media knows that we're going to be in the debates, we're catnip for them. They want trouble. They want to sell newspapers, and rightly so. So we're going to be in those newspapers and in those television programs every single day from the time when it's announced that we're going to be in these debates. And that's, you know, billions and billions of dollars worth of advertising, so that money, which, by the way, our fundraising has accelerated geometrically in the last 2 weeks. I think the market, so to speak, has a sense of what's coming. But it really means that when the final weeks come, we're not going to be at any disadvantage. We're certainly not going to be at an experience disadvantage, because we got more executive experience solving the problems that have to be solved in Washington than any other ticket. We're not going to be at a recognition disadvantage, because everybody's name recognition on those 3 tickets is going to be 99% by the time Election Day comes around. But most of all, we're not going to be at an argument disadvantage, because we have the winning argument. It's a very simple one. The Libertarian Party represents fiscal responsibility, even conservatism. We know we have to set our own house in order. We just want the government to set its house in order as well. Not too much to ask. So that's point A. Point B is that the Libertarian philosophy is to be nice people, not to hurl insults at other people, not to give sanctimonious speeches.
We're in Reno, Sam.
From a Johnson White House, you would never hear a sanctimonious speech demonizing one party or the other. That might be a refreshing change for official Washington. So I think Gary and I might be kind of a long, cool drink of water for our nation's capital, because by definition, when we're elected, that's going to be an end to the partisan bickering. Because both those bickering parties will have been shown the door. So I sometimes think that the squabbling between the parties it must have an impact on the American people, kind of like kids in a family when the parents are splitting up. They know not everything's going on well, and it's just, what kind of a message does Donald Trump, for example, send to our children with his antics, with his disregard for the truth, and his reliance on bluffery and buffoonery and insults? I think young people understand this, because the poll today said that Mr. Trump is faring 4th out of 4 for voters under 30. 4th out of 4, behind both third parties. So in the climactic moments, I really do think that Governor Johnson is going to be able to make the sale. We have the truth on our side. The one promise that Gary and I made to each other running in this election year was to tell the truth to the voters and tell the truth to each other. As a former criminal lawyer, I know that, you know, it's really easier all around if you tell the truth, because then you don't have to remember what you said. But there are moral advantages as well. But, you know, I think people can see that we're sincere and that we're honest. I call I call Gary Honest Gary. He reminds me, frankly, of Abraham Lincoln.
Which was the last time a third party got elected.
Some of you may not know this, but Gary has climbed the highest mountain in all 7 continents. Not too many people have done that. I asked him how he did it, and he said, I just put one foot in front of the other. Yeah, baloney. But it reminds me of what Abraham Lincoln, who's a very tall man, said when someone asked him, well, President Lincoln, how long should a man's legs be? And Lincoln knew what the guy was saying, which is that you're really tall, and so he expected Lincoln to say your legs should be really long, and Lincoln said, your legs should be long enough to reach the ground. Reminds me of Gary. They both got homespun wisdom. And when the campaign, winds on and the electorate at large gets to know Gary and gets to know that he's honest Gary, he may walk into 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. He may not have to run this time. So, it is my distinct honor on this very bright day to present and introduce to you not only the person who is going to be your next president, but the person who's going to be the next president of all of the people of the United States of America, Gary Johnson.
Here. It is like a Bernie rally here. It is so crazy. Like bodies as far as you can see.
Oh, man. So, has there ever been a crazier election in our lives? You know how crazy it is, right? I might be the next president of the United States. That's how crazy it is. And crazy, tell the truth. Tell the truth, you don't have to remember anything. And crazy, beyond my wildest expectations, Bill Weld is my running mate. Brilliant Bill. When I was governor and we overlapped, Bill was known as the smartest governor. And that wasn't coming from me, that was coming from everybody else. But what I saw was that intelligence, but I saw that humility also. And Bill got reelected the second time in Massachusetts by a 71% margin. I mean, how does that work? Being fiscally conservative and being socially liberal. Look, keep government out of the bedroom and keep government out of my pocketbook. I think most people are libertarians. It's just that they don't know it. And that's the big opportunity right now. I mean, the big opportunity right now is look, if we elect Hillary, if we elect Trump, things are going to be more polarized than ever. But what if we elect a couple of libertarians who've been former governors that are standing in the middle of this, hiring both Republicans and Democrats, that are going to, of course, be libertarian-leaning, and call out both sides to actually come together and address the issues that this country faces. And those issues, really, let's just start with spending, fiscally conservative. Let's just start with the fact that nobody is promoting entrepreneurship in this country. Nobody is promoting the fact that we can create our own jobs, that we can create jobs for others. And my advice is worth exactly what you're paying for it, which is nothing. But here's my advice, is take whatever it is you know in life and apply it entrepreneurially. And as difficult as it will be to do that tomorrow, it'll never be easier than to do that tomorrow. So government, what can government play? How can government play a role when it comes to entrepreneurs? Well, just reduce the barriers to entry when it comes to entrepreneurs, making it easy. the sharing economy. It's here. It's cool. Airbnb. Oh my gosh. We can all be entrepreneurs. We can all rent out our places to people that want to come and visit. And you got a heads up here in Reno, I got to tell you. This is a wonderful place to live. But in Santa Fe, Kate, my partner, fiance, and I, we have this really cool place. And it's really close to downtown and all that. And we could make some extra spending money, but guess what? City of Santa Fe says no more Airbnb. Come on. Oh, that's government, and that's not libertarian, right? That is not libertarian. Do they not understand that more money in Kate's and my pocket is more money on the street? And I was talking to a young woman in Baltimore the other day who had her PhD in science, 26 years old, and she says, I have these horrible student debts. But she said, I figured out a way to pay them back. And it's Airbnb. I'm renting out my place. I'm making a lot of money. It's all working out. And the city of Baltimore came in and banned Airbnb. Look, this is very libertarian. This is very libertarian. This is what we stand up for. This is what makes a difference. Uber everything, eliminating the middleman, allowing for the direct offer of goods and services by the person providing those goods and services. So the person providing the goods and services makes more money. The end user has to pay less because eliminating the middleman. So Uber doctor, Uber electrician, Uber plumber. Get rid of the middleman. Everybody makes more, every provider makes more money. Customer has to pay less. Spending. Nobody in this race, and I do mean Trump and Clinton, they're not talking about addressing the entitlements. They're not talking about the fact that we are headed toward a fiscal cliff in this country. And yet we can save Medicare and Medicaid. We can make this work, but we've got to come to some really difficult issues. And Bill and I will take on these difficult issues. Social Security. Look, it's absolutely savable. We're not talking about cutting Social Security, but there are reforms that have to go along with Social Security or it's not going to exist in the future. And taxes. Taxes, look, count on Bill and I to sign. We're not going to get elected king or dictator. This is a constitutional republic. So count on us with regard to any proposal that comes from Congress to sign on to making taxes easier or to lowering taxes. Because when more money is in our pockets, that's money we can spend on our lives as opposed to government knows best. And if I could wave a magic wand, if I could wave a magic wand, I would eliminate income tax. I would eliminate corporate tax. Because we would do that, we would be able to abolish the IRS. Imagine life without the IRS. And this is if I could wave a magic wand, and I would replace all of it with one federal consumption tax. And if we did that, if we simplified taxes to that point, if we had no corporate income tax in this country, and who pays for corporate income tax? I mean, it's you and I, all right? That's who pays for corporate income tax. But if we had no corporate income tax in this country, tens of millions of jobs would get created in this country. Because why would you start up or grow a business or create a job anywhere in the world other than the United States given a zero corporate tax rate? And if we had a zero corporate tax rate, we would issue pink slips to 80% of Washington lobbyists because that's why they're there. They're there to garner special favor, and they get it. And we should be embracing immigration, all right? We are a country of immigrants. I heard that Donald Trump is watching the Olympics tonight. He's seeing how high the Mexican pole vaulters. Look, the deportation of 11 million undocumented workers starts with misinformation on those 11 million undocumented workers. They are hardworking people that have come into the United States, and they have to come in illegally because the government can't provide an easy way for them to get in legally. We need to provide a way to get work visas And a work visa should entail a background check and a social security card so that taxes get paid. They are not murderers and rapists. They statistically commit less crime than U.S. citizens. And let's not build a fence across the border. That is just crazy. An analysis the other day by the Wharton School of Business, and that was the university that Trump graduated from, did an analysis on immigration. Restricting immigration would actually lower our economic output. If we increased immigration for high-skilled workers, it would result in a very minor plus to our economy. But if we allowed for 50% increase in immigrants, we would have a boom in our economy. And that was coming from the Wharton School of Business. Here's another issue for you. Here's another issue for you that's very libertarian, I think. Affordable housing. I mean, it's a topic in every single community, right? Well, first of all, the federal government shouldn't play a role at all when it comes to affordable housing. But let's just take the city of Reno, for example, and how they could address affordable housing. I'll bet there's a 20-acre stretch here available somewhere that's not all that pleasant looking and that the city owns. Well, they could set aside that 20 acres and they could say, look, we're going to assemble some architects and we're going to assemble some engineers, and they're not going to have any regard to building codes. You know that they're going to build it safe. We're not going to have any regard to zoning. It's going to be a 20-acre stretch, and they're going to design and build 600-foot structures. You know, obviously it's going to be very compact, but IKEA, when you go into IKEA, you see these 600 square feet. It's got a toilet, it's got a place to cook, it's got a place to sleep. Well, imagine no government regulation, just a license to design genuinely affordable housing. That's how you do it, is getting rid of government, but doing it in a safe, logical manner with really qualified people. Right now, I think in the world today, unfairly, first of all, we should all loathe crony capitalism. Crony capitalism is alive and well in this world, but regrettably, most of this country has tied crony capitalism with free market. They are absolutely opposite. Crony capitalism is when government gets involved and skews the equation so that things aren't equal. Free market is genuinely the government gets removed from the equation and it allows for equal opportunity. Yeah. Term limits is really a silver bullet. Both Bill and I absolutely support term limits. If term limits existed, elected officials would do the right thing as opposed to whatever it takes to get reelected. And I do believe that is why we have a $20 trillion debt in this country, is because it's all about bringing home the bacon. It's all about getting reelected. When it comes to personal freedom and liberty, shouldn't choice always be at the forefront? That you and I should be able to make choices in our own lives as long as those choices don't put other people in harm's way. And for me, it starts with marriage equality, LGBT rights. How can there be a decision more difficult in anyone's life other than, or how can there be a more difficult decision than abortion? How can there be a more difficult decision? But who should make that decision? The woman involved should make that decision. Nevada, Reno, you've got a chance. Let's legalize marijuana in this country. Yes. There are tens of millions of Americans who are convicted felons that, but for our drug laws, would otherwise be tax-paying, law-abiding citizens. And we've got a whole lot of people behind bars right now that are that are there because of nonviolent, victimless crime are drug laws. We have the highest incarceration rate of any country in the world, and I refuse to believe that we are any less law-abiding. It has to do with the war on drugs, and it has to do with mandatory sentencing. Give judges discretion. I was more outspoken than any governor in the country regarding school choice. Really, just allow us to have choice. So for 6 straight years, I proposed legislation that would have allowed everybody in the state of New Mexico to have choice when it comes to education. I just think it's an exciting notion that we might have tens of thousands or 1 million educational entrepreneurs that would get unleashed on providing better education in this country. There are a couple of departments that need to be eliminated in the federal government. One of them is the Department of Education. And when people first hear that, people first hear it, it's like you're anti-education. No, I'm not anti-education. It's that Nevada gives Washington 13 cents of revenue. And then Washington sends Nevada back 11 cents. How do you like that equation? Well, that's the bureaucratic wash and dry cycle. You get back 11 cents, and then Washington tells Nevada, Reno, how they're supposed to spend the 11 cents, and it costs Reno 15 cents to accommodate what Washington wants. So the whole thing is just a negative. The whole thing is a money loser. Just keep it. Let all of us just keep it and determine our own destiny. And that's all about states, right? States' rights. We make the best decisions. States make the best decisions, municipalities make the best decisions, you and I as human beings make the best decisions. The Department of Commerce, what is that? That is crony capitalism. That's about somebody that has an advantage in something and they want to restrict something else. I mean, that's all about crony capitalism. And then housing and urban development. And let's say that when these departments were established that they had a role, but look, government should be dynamic and we should be looking to focus on things that we really need to do and eliminating things that just don't work anymore. The death penalty. You know, I supported the death penalty until I found out, well, first of all, I found out that it costs more to send someone to death row than it does to lock them up for the rest of their lives. And that's because the attorney fees that go along with the appeals and everything. So initially that kind of upset me initially. But then I came to find out that there is like a 4% error rate in the death penalty. When Governor Ryan in the 90s ordered a review of everyone on death row in Illinois, which was about 36 on death row, and because of DNA testing was able to release over 20 of those on death row because they were categorically proven innocent, this is not good public policy. It is flawed public policy. Let's get rid of the death penalty. I don't want to put 999 guilty people to death if it means putting one innocent person to death, much less 4 innocent people to death to punish 96 that are guilty. And that's what we got going right now. And make no bones about it, I support the Second Amendment. I support the Second Amendment of the Constitution. But in that vein, we should all be open to a discussion or a debate over keeping guns out of the hands of the mentally ill. I just haven't seen any proposals that do that. Keeping guns out of the hands of would-be terrorists. We should be open to that discussion. I would be really curious as President of the United States to know what transpired between the FBI and the shooter in Orlando. I bet they have some real ideas on how you go forward when it comes to that. And our military. Look, We support our military. We support those that are behind us, who have our backs. There was a poll released 2 weeks ago by active military personnel on who they chose or who they favored for President of the United States. Gary Johnson, 39%. Yeah. That was amazing. That was amazing. Well, I'd like to think of it as, gee, we like what this guy is saying. And here's what Bill Weld and I are saying when it comes to our military. Look, we should have an uncompromised national defense. If we're attacked, we're going to attack back. And there'll be judicious use of our military in that vein. But the fact that we engage ourselves in regime change has resulted in the unintended consequence of making things worse, not better. You can't make it up. You can't make it up. But Hillary and Obama, and they didn't do this purposely, they couldn't have, but they go in for regime change in Syria and Libya, and of course that's what happened in Iraq, was regime change. But Syria and Libya, they go into Syria and Libya and they arm the opposition in both of those countries. And the opposition is aligned with ISIS. And the opposition we arm the opposition gets beaten, and all the arms end up in ISIS' hands. But this is what happens when we involve ourselves in regime change. And Afghanistan, are we going to be in Afghanistan forever? No, we need to get out of Afghanistan tomorrow. And as bad, and these aren't lightly made statements. You know, there's going to be issues getting out of Afghanistan tomorrow, and I think we can deal with them. But if we get out of Afghanistan tomorrow, it's going to be the same situation that's going to exist 20 years from now, or for some, I guess we are going to stay there forever. Look, if we're attacked, we're going to attack back, and make no bones, we are at war with ISIS, and that's sand through an hourglass, and we'll see those sands go through the hourglass as president and vice president. And has America ever been better? Has it ever been better? Really, we communicate better with one another. Our kids are smarter than ever. And the #1 law enforcement tool that we have right now is our smartphones. It really is a wonderful time to be alive. But do we have issues right now in this country? Yeah, we've got issues. One of them is Black Lives Matter. They do matter. We have had our heads in the sand. When I say we, let me start with myself. I've had my head in the sand over the discrimination that does exist when it comes to people of color. There's a 5 times more likelihood that you're going to get shot if you are of color. There's a 5 times more likelihood that if you are arrested, you'll go to prison than if you are white. And that exists. And I've had my head in the sand over all this. So we do have issues, but have we ever become more aware, more quickly of issues like this than we are today? And I think that that is the time that we are living in right now. So our vision of the future really is one of optimism. Look, we do have issues, but let's come together. Let's come together and let's realize the greatness that we genuinely are living. I personally want to bring an end also to the imperial presidency. Shouldn't there be a more frugal way of traveling around than the tens of millions of dollars that it costs the president to go down to the grocery store and back? I mean, maybe it's a, I don't know, Nike ball cap, it's shorts, I don't know, something, but there's got to be a better way to do this. And Air Force One is whichever aircraft the President of the United States is traveling in. It doesn't have to be a 747 everywhere.
Uber.
Nevada, Reno, you rock. This is so cool. This is so cool that we would start this whole campus rally off being here, and that you have come out like this. You have no idea how energizing this is. Cannot thank you all enough.
Microphone, and the governors are going to answer some questions for you guys. So if you have a question, go ahead and raise your hand, and hopefully the microphone will find you.
If we didn't make this clear before, Bill and I are planning a partnership as president and vice president. 2 for the price of 1. I think I hope you find it refreshing.
Just one word to the wise. I answered all the questions that I know the answer to in my testimony in chief, so most of the questions should be for Gary.
Hello, my name is Dan Harmoning, and I read your LA Times interview. I thought it was fantastic. I agree with virtually everything you had to say. One thing that concerned me was the discussion of public lands, and to me, the greatest gift this country has to the public is public lands and the public having access. And you suggested that you were interested in possibly selling off some of the federal land. And that's a huge concern for me. I work in the mining industry. We lease public lands. I recreate in public lands, and it's really important.
Yeah, well, Nevada understands this. So when it comes to public lands, not looking at Forest Service land, not looking at wilderness, but BLM, really, BLM. When you, and maybe you all know this, but it came as a shock to me, and you know that Nevada has a lot of BLM land, just like New Mexico. Nevada, I think, has more than any other, but BLM land is laid out in checkerboards. It's red squares and it's black squares. And so when you look out over the horizon, when you see someone, a rancher that owns, or that has a ranch that's 20,000 acres, well, 10,000 acres of it is going to be private, 10,000 of it is going to be leased. That's this checkerboard, red squares, green squares. They're not riparian areas, they're BLM lands, and it would be much better if we were able to sell these off, put them on the property roll docket, and just, so when Washington talks about public access, how do you get from the red square, how do you get public access to a black square? And it's laid out geographically, red squares and black squares. Give it to the state of Nevada. Give BLM lands back. Yes. BLM lands.
Bureau of Land Management.
Bureau of Land Management. Yeah.
Yeah, we're all reading.
Not Forest Service, not wilderness.
Right.
Hi, my name is Pat, and we've talked about all the Republicans coming over to the Libertarians. Well, I want to tell you I'm a Democrat coming over to the Libertarians. My question for you is, what is the drop-dead date for you to reach 15% in order to be included in the presidential debates in September?
I don't think they've actually set a drop-dead date, but we want to get there by the 15th of this month. So we have a campaign right now, 15 by the 15th. We're hoping to be at 20% before the first debates, and if that occurs, and last week I was told that the audience for the first presidential debate is projected to exceed the Super Bowl. So if we're in the 20% range going into the first debate, anything is possible. But
let me just add to that. I don't think that the 15% standard is cast in stone. It's a percentage figure that the commission has used historically. But you know, when they started, independents in this country were 32%. The last election, they were 42%. So many more people are in the middle and are independents.
Like a lollipop, but don't lick it.
I was saying that the 15% is just a historical figure used by the Commission on Debates. And when they started, the number of independents, registered independents in this country was 32%, and now it's 42% and climbing. So you could make an argument that given the changing complexion of the electorate, that percentage should be very down. You could also make an argument that as a matter of public policy, given the unpopularity of the two major party nominees and the restiveness in the electorate, that as a matter of national interest, that a party like ourselves should be included to ventilate the discussion and give people a third way, which happens to be a way in the middle. I actually find those arguments quite persuasive. The third avenue is that I understand the Commission may be considering giving special emphasis to third-party candidates that can show marked strength in swing states. Well, Gary is already at the top with the other two candidates in the state of Utah, which has historically not been a swing state, it's been a red state. But unless Gary runs away with it, it's going to be a swing state this year. And there are other swing states out here in the West where the indications are that Gary is going to run very strongly, and maybe a couple in the Northeast as well. So there are really three roads to Jerusalem, and we're not committing to travel only the first road.
Hi, how you doing? My name is Keith Costello, and I'm a disabled veteran. Could you tell me how you would solve the screwed up situation with the VA right now?
Well, my dad went to the VA a couple of summers ago. He's 96. He was D-Day, right, Normandy. But what I saw within the VA was a lot of really dedicated healthcare professionals. And those are those that are working in the VA. The issue, as I understand it, is access to those wonderful individuals. And to me, that's really an easy, it's an easy fix. It may not end up being that way. And if it's not, I'll be very transparent about why it's not as president. But it seems to me that we could be issuing veterans also a health insurance card that could be basically redeemed at any healthcare center where those needs would get met. We can talk all day about cutting government, which is a good thing, but our obligations to veterans are non-negotiable. Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Oscar Sanchez, and so you talk about, from what I got, you talk about like cutting taxes as much as possible, but the government still needs funds to be able to function. And correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I read, that Reagan in his second term actually raised taxes when the biggest like economic growth during his presidency happened. And I just kind of want to get your thoughts on like that.
No, talking about Reagan, and my first vote for, and I've self-identified as Libertarian since 1971, but that wasn't reflected in my registration. But my first vote for Libertarian president was Bergland against Reagan, his second term, because he just blew the lid off of spending. Now that was me. And look, is there any area of our lives that we can't be more frugal, can't be smarter? Yeah, all of us have to deal with that every day of our lives, but when it comes to government, it just keeps on growing. And I have to tell you, I think that we can reduce government spending by 20%, and nobody's going to notice the difference other than things will be made better. It'll just be more efficient.
Thank you, gentlemen, for coming out today. I talked to a number of folks, both in the Republican aisle and the Democratic aisle, who are very disappointed with the candidates that are being proffered and offered by those two parties. What message would you have to reach out to Bernie supporters and folks who aren't enamored with Donald Trump that would let them know what you're about and what is distinctly different about your campaign as opposed to the two evils that we have facing us today?
Well, this is going to kind of sort of be a soundbite, but you know, when we were growing up, if you weren't a Democrat in college, you didn't have a heart. And if you weren't, and I was a Democrat, and if when you got your first paycheck, you weren't a Republican, you didn't have a brain, that's when I became a Republican. But you know what? We have hearts and brains. All of us have hearts and brains. And I think that's what the Libertarian Party embodies. I really do. It's really the best of both, what I'll call the best of both worlds. It's really representative of most Americans.
Oh, sorry. Oh, you can, okay.
Hello?
Oh, I don't know.
Yes.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, cool. Thank you, Mr. Johnson, and thank you, Mr. Weld, for visiting us here in Nevada. It's a pleasure to see you both here. Again, sorry, I'm kind of a bit of a political geek, so it's nice to see you guys. And I've followed your stories, and they've been great and very interesting stories from coast to coast. Well, that being said, on the issue of politics, I want to ask you a question, since I'm quite conflicted as we stand today and doing due diligence on being a proper voter. I'm further disgusted at who I have as a standard bearer of my party. Well, disgusted would be an understatement. I'm horribly disgusted. And for multiple reasons. And ironic as it is, policy is the least of it. So I'm posing this question for anyone in my position who's of color and namely being in my position. Oh, sorry, I lost you there. Why should I vote for you guys? What does your candidacy or your ticket appeal to someone in my position to go for you guys?
Your party is Republican, sir? I missed that. Yes. You heard Gary say earlier, Black Lives Matter. And, when the question is put by the leaders of that movement, do Black Lives Matter? The answer comes back loud and clear from the Republican Party, all lives matter. Well, they might as well say up against the wall. That's not the answer to the question. The answer to the question is yes, Black Lives Matter. We have a national emergency here because youth of color have suffered discrimination for so long in so many respects that they're just behind the wall. It starts with education. They're trapped in inner city schools. We don't have the charter schools and the school choice we should, so their parents are powerless to move them into schools where they can progress more rapidly. When they do, the educational system says, okay, Johnny, you get to 7th grade and you're at the end of 7th grade, you're going to 8th grade. You get to 12th grade, you're going on to college. They don't care whether the kid can read or write. They think anyone who says Johnny should take a test and prove that he can read and write before he gets advanced is a racist. And I know that because I was called a racist in Massachusetts when I said, let's have high stakes tests, let's stop social promotion so that the educational ticket means something. And that's part of an answer to empowering black youth to be able to compete for jobs. We have to make those jobs more available, and there's a lot of ways to do that. We have to make the education more affordable past high school. I think online education, distance learning is part of the answer. Partnerships between community colleges, universities, and private employers so that kids can work for them part-time in college and then have their debt excused when they get out. Partnerships between universities and government so that students can say, I promise to work in the public sector for 3 years after I get out, and then they don't have any public debt. All those things can help address this problem. But I do think it's a national emergency, and the answer is all hands on deck, and we have to focus. Gary would mention, and in fact has, that in terms of incarceration rates in the criminal justice system, the young black male has a 4 to 5 times greater likelihood of being incarcerated for the same conduct as a young white male. That shouldn't be the United States of America.
Hello, my name is Kathy Hartwell. There are thousands of legally operating marijuana stores in this country. I happen to own 2 stores in Washington State, and IRS tax code 280E effectively taxes me at over 50% because I can't take normal business deductions. If we can't deschedule marijuana, do you think that we could at least make exemptions to 280E for small businesses operating legally within their states?
Well, we do need to, and I pledge to deschedule marijuana completely. Day one. And it is going to, it's going to be a state's issue. It's going to be a state's issue just like alcohol is a state's issue. That's how it's going to evolve. And it's been rolled out, and you point out the problem with the rollout is that if you get taxed too much, then a black market exists, and I'm afraid that Washington State applaud them for what they've done, but when you tax something 4 times at 28% before it actually gets on the counter, why buy it legally when you continue to buy it illegally and pay a lot less money? Do you all know, and you're going to face this here in Nevada, do you all realize that at one point in Washington State, after they made it illegal, that at one point marijuana was selling for $26,000 a pound? I can't make it up. $65 a gram.
I remember when pot was a buck a joint.
How do I know? I was there in Washington State. I saw it rolled up, and you had people lined up for blocks to buy it that had never done it before, and now it was legal, but they had no idea that they were paying 65 times more for it.
First, thanks for joining us at Reno. We appreciate you guys being here. So, as you guys know, we are $19.5 trillion in debt and counting. So you're planning to eliminate income tax, which is a main source of revenue for the government, and you plan to replace that with a consumption tax. But a consumption tax is heavily based on consumer behavior, which isn't predictable. So I'm curious specifically how you plan to reduce our mounting debt.
Well, first, you have to start by balancing the federal budget. So a pledge by both of us is that we will submit a balanced budget to Congress. Now, just recognize that that's unprecedented. Just balancing the budget is unprecedented. Just realize that if you had a 2% growth rate in overall spending, that would also be unprecedented. But if you just had a 2% increase in overall spending and you couple that with historic economic growth, you'd have a balanced budget in 5 years. I suggest when it comes to the consumption tax that you look at the fair tax as a way to dot the I's and cross the T's on how you accomplish one federal consumption tax. It is meant to be revenue neutral. We are looking, though, to reduce taxes, but bottom line, you make more money, you consume more. Imagine life without the IRS.
Over here. My name is Eric Govan. I live here in Reno. Thank you for coming out to Reno. Appreciate you coming to the Silver State. Great job in giving us props on CNN the other night for prostitution. Thank you so much. Obamacare. Status quo, repeal.
Well, I'm afraid that unlike Republicans that say repeal it, and that's just not going to happen, really, reforms need to take place when it comes to our healthcare system. And the simple reforms are that we have better healthcare and that it costs less. So to accomplish that, really, you've got to bring free market approaches to healthcare. And by the way, healthcare in this country is about as far removed from free market as it possibly can be. I agree with Chief Justice Roberts, who said that that President Obama's healthcare plan is a tax. My health insurance premiums have quadrupled. I haven't seen a doctor in 3 years. I'm sure you've all experienced the same thing. But if we had a genuine free market approach to healthcare, we would have advertised pricing and we would have advertised outcomes. Right now we go to the doctor, we have no idea what it's going to cost, and we have no idea what the outcome is going to be. The government could actually get involved in blowing the lid off of the supply of doctors. Apparently there aren't enough doctors to go around. But the innovation that would exist if you genuinely reduced restrictions to getting into healthcare from a Eastern medicine standpoint, from the internet, I think you would have Stitches R Us. I think you'd have X-rays R Us. I think you'd have gallbladders R Us, and you'd have advertised pricing. You'd have advertised outcomes, and we would see dramatic improvement in quality of healthcare and the costs. We would not, in a genuine free market approach to healthcare, we would not have insurance to cover ourselves for ongoing medical need. We would have insurance to cover ourselves for catastrophic injury and illness, and we would pay as you go in a system that I'm going to bet would cost 1/5 of what it currently costs. Thank you all so much for being here. Cannot thank you enough. Cannot thank you enough. Really, what a wonderful start. Launching the ship here. Thank you.
I'm coming with you. We're going to see him, right?
No.
I kept trying to wait to get you the
Yeah.
TPP question.
Where's at the tie?
Yes.
Hang out in that area.
Okay.
How you doing?
Bill,
You want to take him? I'll get
Bill, can you say hello to the internet? A lot of your fans are on here, like 4,400
Well,
people.
hi everybody, and thank you to Reno and the great state of Nevada for getting this all launched. Great evening.
Well, this was wonderful. There have been a lot of questions on the internet that we didn't get asked here, 2 in particular. One was about the TPP, and have you guys actually gotten to read it? Because the rumor is that nobody's read it. That's really the big concern, is that nobody's read it and there's no congressional oversight. So have you gotten to read it?
I've read much of it. I'm familiar with the fact that it's a treaty with 11 Asian nations, not including China, that give us a favored trading status in the heart of Asia, with China not at the table. I don't wish China any ill, but that's strategically, that's a great step for the United States. And in general, I am a free trader, and this is a free trade treaty. I think the United States makes out better with free trade, no matter what the Donald says, and no matter what Mrs. Clinton says most recently.
No, and I agree with the free trade aspect of it. I just worry about the governmental oversight and the lack of free speech. That's the rumor. I just know, but I haven't read the whole thing.
The same thing happened with NAFTA. You get a really good treaty, which is going to help the United States a lot, and then at the last minute people say, we want to force these environmental changes and these labor changes on the Mexicans, or else we're not going to do the treaty. I don't know. That's a form of linkage that seems to me doesn't really go to the jugular of the reason for the treaty in the first place.
Awesome. And Lincoln was the last third-party candidate to be elected, and he was the first Republican. So you guys have the potential here of launching an entirely...
Oh no, Gary Johnson is my Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah.
The Whig Party split in half, just the way the Republican Party is going to this year or the next time, and Gary Johnson is going to be the Abraham Lincoln of
I love that.
part of this century.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Okay.
I've seen
Here, let's go this way. Let's see. See if we can go over here. Whoops.
Yeah. Singing about going up and trying to do that. It's
Yes,
cool.
be careful,
Oh, yes,
because
sorry.
this is high power.
Oh, okay.
Come over quick.
Going this way.
Quick. They're getting ready to get off stage.
Okay. No, that's okay. Did you guys have another question for Gary that I might be able to get while he comes off the stage? I saw somebody had a question up there. Free trade for small business. Okay. Sorry, I'm giving Okay. I swear this was like a Bernie rally. There were so many people here. I mean, it was completely packed all the way up, all the way down. Huge.
I don't know. They're allowed to say. Yes, sorry. Watch out over here. It's high power.
more for a guy.
Thank you so much. Gary, one more for a guy who drove from LA for you?
Oh, of course.
Awesome. Are you? Man, that is so cool. Hey, I appreciate it. Hey, great to meet you. Good luck. Thank you.
Say hello to your internet.
Yep, thanks. Thank you so
Gary,
much.
these are all your fans.
All right. Wow, what a great kickoff. This is fantastic.
It was wonderful.
Fantastic.
And they want,
oh my gosh.
They want to say hi. And we definitely want to get you in that 15%.
All right,
and I will happily help you.
Love it, love it.
Thank you. Bye.
Here we go.
Gotta do, oh, wait a minute, I gotta put it on the right thing. Okay.
Okay, folks, we gotta go. We got 4 a.m. in the morning for the governors. We gotta get out.
I don't see you.
Where are you?
Where are we?
There we go. Okay.
Give him hell, Gary.
Okay, and that's it. Secret Service has taken him out. You got to see Gary Johnson, and hopefully for all you burners who are on here, who are wondering if you should be voting green or voting Libertarian, now you have a little bit more information, and you're going to be able to make a better choice. I am happy that I was able to live stream this for you, and if you have any more questions, put them down below, and I will be asking follow-up questions to the campaign later. Thank you so much.